Welcome to tonight's Woolwich Township Council meeting, November 10th, 2020. Only a couple of more months left in 2020 and then we'll be finished with 2020 and hopefully on to bigger and better things. Before we start, I will remind Council that this portion of the meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube as well as televised on Rogers Channel 20. I will remind Council to speak clearly and project their voice when the people at home can hear. I'll now do a roll call for the benefit of the public watching this meeting, and when I call your name, please wave at your camera and say here or present. I'm Mayor Johnson, present, and chairing this meeting. Councillor Martin.
Present.
Councillor McMillan.
Present.
Councillor Merlehan.
I'm present.
Councillor Redekop.
Present.
And Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Very good. Can I have a motion that Council reconvenes in open session? Moved by Councillor Merlehan, seconded by Councillor McMillan. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Before we start, I want to acknowledge that the land we meet on has been here from time immemorial. People have inhabited southern Ontario for about 10,000 years, and we acknowledge the Attawandaron, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee peoples who lived here when settlers arrived and shared this land with us. May we together learn to care for each other, for our flora and fauna, and the land we inhabit together. Traditionally, Remembrance Day is marked by a parade and multiple ceremonies to honor the courage and sacrifice of the many military men and women who serve our country. The pandemic has changed many of our rituals this year. Besides numerous assignments around the world, some of our military are also helping us in the battle against COVID-19 here at home. Although we cannot honor them in person, we can still take a moment to remember the sacrifice of the men and women who have fallen serving our country and to acknowledge the courage of those who still serve. Our cenotaph, which has 25 names etched onto it, identifies individuals from our area who made the supreme sacrifice during the First World War and the Second World War. Their names and legacy will continue to be honored as their names are read aloud at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. Although COVID-19 has changed plans for ceremonies across the country, we as Canadians can wear a poppy, and when the clock strikes 11 on November 11th, we can stop whatever we are doing and observe 2 minutes of silence to reflect and remember. So tonight, let's start this meeting with a moment of silence to remember and reflect. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of community interest this evening? Seeing none, there's no items to come forward from closed. Can I have a motion that the following minutes be adopted and presented? Council minutes from October 20th, 2020, and Committee of the Whole minutes from November 3rd, 2020. Someone like to move them? Councillor Redekop, Councillor Shantz, all those in favor, and that's carried. Okay, we're going to start with the planning public meeting. We have two of them tonight. This meeting constitutes the formal public meeting required under Section 34 of the Planning Act. The meeting is for information purposes only, and no decisions will be made at this time. The application will be brought forward at a future meeting of the Committee of the Whole when staff has had an opportunity to review all submissions and prepare recommendations. All those attending will be given an opportunity to speak and are asked to submit a written outline of their oral submission to the clerk. Please contact planning staff at the township to receive further notifications about the application. First, we have a zoning and draft plan of subdivision. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Township of Woolwich to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Woolwich prior to approval or refusal of a proposal, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Woolwich prior to approval or refusal of a proposal, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party. I declare the planning public meeting to be open. Our first item is zone change 60/2020 draft plan of subdivision for Old Scout Limited on Old Scout Place in St. Jacobs. But before we discuss this report, Mr. Pomponi would like to make an introduction. Mr. Pomponi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to take a second here just to introduce Reno DeBello. Reno comes to us from Guelph, the city of Guelph. He's got extensive experience with them through some downtown design projects, some urban design review, economic development, and he's also got extensive experience in consulting with IBI and PEIL. So we've already begun to benefit from his experience and knowledge through his work with PEIL and Guelph, certainly related to downtown review. We've met today and had some really good conversations, and he's already proven to be very valuable to us. If I could say personally, him and I worked together way back in our Cambridge days, probably 30 years ago, and our paths have crossed again, which often happens in the region of Waterloo. I think people could have seen that. So with that, I'd like to leave it up to Reno and thank him for joining our team. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, Mayor Shantz, members of council, staff, members of the public. My name is Reno DeBello. I am the development planner assigned to process the zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by GSP Group on behalf of the owner of 1065 Old Scout Road, St. Jacobs. The subject lands are described as Plan 1502, Lot 7, which is located at 1065 Old Scout Place, St. Jacobs. The property is 0.04 hectares in size and is located within the settlement boundary of St. Jacobs. The subject lands are bound by an existing retirement home, Valley View Manor, to the north, a stormwater management block to the west, and a residential subdivision under construction to the east. The subject lands were formerly used as a salvage yard, which has ceased operation, and the lands are now vacant. The existing official plan designation for the property is residential and auxiliary land use. The applicant is requesting to rezone the property from agricultural to residential / with multiple design guidelines in the R7A to permit the development of 3 townhouse complexes, each containing 4 residential units. The applicant is also proposing site-specific amendments to the design guidelines of the R7A zone, which are to permit a garage to extend up to 1.4 meters in front of the front wall of the residential unit, to permit a garage to extend 0.3 meters in front of the front porch, to permit the exterior width of the garage to exceed 50% of the width of the house, including the garage, when such a garage is located ahead of the porch / front wall, to permit a minimum front porch depth of 1.1 meter versus a minimum requirement depth of 1.5 meters on lots 2, 3, 6, 7, 10, and 11. To permit a minimum front porch width of 28% versus the required 40% on lots 1 and 12, and to exempt lots 1 to 12 from the requirements of section 11B-3.5BI and to 3 as it relates to the front porch and lot requirements. The requested changes to the zoning bylaw would provide for the subdivision plan totaling 12 townhouse units, minimum 6.53 meters by 36.7 meters, which will connect to full municipal services, water, sanitary, and storm, and front onto Old Scout Place. Once the application is reviewed and all issues are addressed, a report from Development Services with a recommendation will be considered at a future meeting of council. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Council, do you have questions for Mr. Del Bello? Councilor Moran.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Mr. Del Bello. Did I get? I hope I didn't butcher that.
It's Del Bello, so yes.
Del Bello. Okay, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Welcome to the township.
Thank you.
I'm back to this particular report. Can you tell us if there's something about this piece of property that the owners or GSP group is here tonight to ask for a whole bunch of amendments? Is there something particular with the lot that they can't abide by the council design requirements as they've been for every other development that has come forward?
Through you, Mayor Shantz. That's a good question, Councillor. I do believe the representative from GSP Group is here this evening. She is on Zoom, and I believe that is an excellent question for her, if possibly she could answer. From my perspective and the township's perspective, again, we are reviewing the application as we speak now, and through the review process, we will determine the reasonings why these specific site requirements are required and why they cannot meet them. But back to the original statement, I believe the representative from GSP is here, and potentially she could answer that question of yours.
Okay, I'll do that then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the delegations then.
The original statement, I believe the representative GSP is here, and potentially
We have a few delegations this evening for the two planning public reports. But before we begin, I would like to remind delegations of some guidelines for participating in tonight's meeting. Please leave your video turned off and your microphone muted until you are called upon to speak. If your microphone is on and you are disrupting the meeting, you will be muted. Please be advised that tonight's meeting does not involve a question and answer period. Any questions you ask will be noted, and the appropriate staff member will follow up with you at a later date. Staff are not available for questions this evening. However, you can always contact them by phone or email if you have further questions. We ask that you keep your comments brief and refrain from repeating information delivered by another delegate. After you speak, please wait for any questions from council. Once there are no further questions, please turn your microphone and camera off again. You may leave the meeting after your delegation is done if you wish. If you would like to remain on the Zoom call and watch the remainder of the meeting, you may do so as long as you keep your camera and microphone turned off. Any disruptive behavior may result in being removed from the meeting. Our first delegate, I'll welcome Sarah Code of GSP Group. Ms. Code, you look like you're ready to go, so whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. And I do believe I have a presentation. I'm not sure if it's going to show on the screen. There we go. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. My name is Sarah Code, planner with GSP Group and representing the owner of 1065 Old Scout Place. Next slide, please. So as Reno indicated, the site is 0.4 hectares or 1 acre, and it is located directly to the west of the Valley View Phase 2 subdivision, which is currently under construction. And the site was used as a former salvage yard and is now vacant. Next slide. The site is designated residential and ancillary use, and this designation is intended to accommodate all types of residential uses. Next slide. The site is currently zoned agricultural, and we are proposing to rezone the site to residential multiple with design guidelines to permit townhouses on the site. And as indicated, we have requested site-specific regulations related to the garage widths and porch depths. Next slide. Before you on the screen is the draft plan of subdivision, which depicts how the lots will be divided up, and there will be 12 lots. Next slide. And these are the proposed building elevations. So there will be 3 blocks of set of 4 townhouses, and some with double car garages, others with single, both double and single story units. And that does conclude my presentation, but I would be happy to answer any questions that there might be. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Merlihan, did you want to ask your question?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Shantz. Through you to Ms. Code. I'm happy to see that a piece of property is going to go from a salvage yard to residential in that neighborhood. I think it's a much better fit. However, I have a question about the design. You're coming to council to ask for quite a few amendments. While they might look minor in nature, is GSP? I'm not sure if you guys came up with the plan for this site, but is your firm aware of the design guidelines that Woolwich Township has been using for many years? And why can't a barren piece of land with new designs just fit the requirements of the township? I guess I had asked our planner if there was something about the property that made it impossible to meet the design standards. So if you can explain why you need that.
Sure, I can try and answer that question. So the builder is proposed to be Bromberg Homes, and so Bromberg Homes did come up with the elevations, and they have used these elevations in other municipalities and have found that they work quite well. And so I wouldn't say that there's anything necessarily specific about this site, but for example, increasing the depth of the porches then requires that the gable be bumped out on the second story. There's a lot of moving parts in terms of if we are to meet all those regulations, then they start to impact the elevations that Bromberg has already designed. And it is our opinion that they are well-designed units and that they provide variation in materials and will contribute positively to the streetscape. So we were fine to support the proposed amendments to the zoning based on the design of the elevations.
Okay.
Councilor Reddecock.
Through you to Sarah. Your first slide said that it was zoned residential, and then your second or third slide said that you have to rezone it from agricultural to residential. So I'm just a little bit confused. I'm okay with the development, but what are you asking of us?
Sorry, the site is designated in the official plan as residential. The zoning is agricultural. So we are requesting a rezoning, nothing to do with the official plan.
Councilor McMillan.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, kind of piggybacking on Councilor Merlihan's comments, we talked about how some of these zoning regulations have been in place for a long time. I think if you go back to when they started, a townhouse, for instance, likely would have been, a young professional, maybe not a two-income family. And with housing prices going the way they've gone in the last 10 years, looking at townhouses being more two-income families that are filling them. Would the impact on the two-car garages be related to the type of people that are living in townhouses now? And maybe that's why we need a double-car garage on townhouses, where back when the zoning regulations were created, they have been in place a long time. Maybe that wasn't as much the case. That might be a question more for staff, but I'm happy if anybody wants to take a shot at it.
Mr. Pomponi, do you want to take a shot at that one?
I'm also fine if nobody wants to answer it.
I'm not seeing people jumping up and down on it.
Sure, I'll try. And hopefully I got all the question because it jumped in and out a little bit there, so I apologize. But I guess when you're looking at townhouses and you're looking at this development, the first thing I'd like to explain is that this is just a proposal that's been presented to us, and we're presenting the proposal as submitted. There's not a recommendation to it. So the assessment of the appropriateness of the variances is something that would come forward in the next report. So we would look at those. And some of them may be appropriate, some of them may not be. But the guidelines are there to kind of set a stage as to where you're going to start from. And in some cases, you can modify them based on the proposal. So the proposal that's put before us was what that they are thinking would be inappropriate for the site. It is a bit unusual that some of these units, the end ones in particular, do have double car garages. I would say that I'll just go off of my experience as a consultant and through previous jobs in Cambridge and wherever, is that often when you do get into developments where it is townhouse development, when you start to get that reduced frontage for any unit, even for singles, you start to get impacts on the street for on-street parking. So then what happens to on-street parking? It's one of the questions that we're going to be asking, is that what's the impact of on-street parking? Having the double car garages here and a wider driveway, especially on the end units, because they tend to be a little bit wider, it gives you the ability to take the on-street parking to put it on site on these individual units. So that's the thinking behind it. I hope I answered your question. I'm not sure if I did.
I appreciate the effort.
There's a political reply. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Ms. Code, and we'll move on then to the next one. This is a zone. Thank you. A zone change application for Eris Glen Developments in Hopewell Crossing subdivision in Breslau, and Mr. Dalbello is going to be here again to give us some background. Whenever you're ready.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Shantz. Good evening, Mayor Shantz, members of council, staff, members of the public. I'm the development planner to sign the zoning bylaw amendment application already submitted. Apologize for that. Yes, to process the zoning bylaw amendment application for Eris development for blocks 47 and 48. The applicant is requesting to amend the C4B zoning with a site-specific provision to permit more than one apartment on the main floor. Standalone apartments, no commercial, and the block 47 and 48 have a commercial floor minimum, and that greenhouse road be frontage for block 47. The location, the two parcels of land are identified as blocks 47 and 48 within the draft approved Hopewell Crease subdivision 30T-11701. Block 47 is in phase 1B and block 48 is in phase 2 of the subdivision. The two blocks are within the Breslau settlement area. The official plan, land use designation that applies to the subject property is commercial/mixed use. The applicant is requesting to amend a site-specific zoning for the two blocks of land to permit more than one residential unit on the ground floor of a mixed-use building, to permit standalone multi-unit residential apartment buildings where the buildings do not front onto a public road and where there is a non-residential use established elsewhere within the block, where the current regulations require commercial on the main floor with no more than one residential unit on the main floor of section 19B.2.5. The applicant is also requesting that the blocks be required to maintain a minimum of 25% of all ground floor area for non-residential uses in order to add flexibility to the building form and maintain the mix of uses intended in the commercial mixed use designation of the C4B zone, and that Greenhouse Road be considered the frontage for block 47, and that Lansby Lane frontage be considered the rear property line. Once the application is reviewed and all the issues are addressed, a report from Development Service with a recommendation will be considered at a future meeting of council. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? I have a question. I know we've talked a lot in I appreciate this is your first meeting, so if you can't answer this, that's fine.
I will try.
We've talked quite a bit about Breslau needing more commercial and trying to make that available in Breslau. Does this proposal change the amount of commercial space, square footage, I guess, that we have allocated in Breslau? And if it does, is there a proposal, sister proposal that would move it somewhere else?
Through you, Mayor Shantz there. Yeah, the removal of the commercial portion is going to reduce it some, but at the same time, through the process, we will be discussing this with the developer and saying maybe there's another opportunity and another block of the subdivision that is potentially more visibly usable to have commercial instead of where it was originally proposed. So to answer your question, there will be a potential reduction. That's what we'll be looking at. But at the same time, through the whole review process, we will be looking at a couple other blocks in that subdivision saying maybe there's a potential to have the commercial moved from these blocks to another block within that subdivision so that we can maintain that same amount of commercial in the Breslau area.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shantz?
Thank you. Through you to Mr. DeBello or possibly even Mr. McLaughlin. When we have a mixed use like this with residential and commercial, what about parking? What do we do about parking?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, I believe in the drawing they've provided in their plan, they show that there is some parking availability that they will include in that. So part of the process, once this is gone through, they have internal parking, so they will go through a site plan process for the block itself, and that would include to show all the parking that's sufficient and meets the zoning bylaw as required for the parking for it. So, and with the mixed use, there is a combination of residential parking and commercial parking for it. So that will be captured and looked at through the whole process of this application and any site plan application that will come forward.
Go ahead.
And maybe a little bit more specific then, now that this is a new subdivision or new project, and also there's no public transit in Breslau at this point. What about vehicles that are electric vehicles? If homeowners have electric vehicles, where would they plug those in overnight?
That would be up to, I'm sorry, through you, Mayor Shantz. With regards to electric vehicle, right now, again, it's just starting at the city, the municipality just recently. I'm not absolutely for sure if we do have standardization for electric vehicle hookups, but with regards to private properties, individuals have the opportunity to hook up their own individual units for electric vehicles. For example, if they own a Tesla, they have the option to either plug it into a normal 110 volt unit in their house, or they could buy the entire unit. Are you specifically asking with regards to the commercial portion of that development, or the residential portion with regards to electrified parking?
No, it's more for the residential, because it looks to me like there's no driveways or anything like that for the residential. So it would be just a regular parking lot.
Correct.
So how would we take care of those electric vehicles?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, through the planning process, we could have the opportunity to suggest that they put in already conduits into the pavement, so that they can have a sub panel for electrification, so they can have electrical cars park and charging up. Through my experience through other municipalities, though, there are quite a few developers who do that for the fact that there is a need for it and a want for it by individuals in the homes and in the commercial properties. So through this whole process, I believe we will try and encourage the developer, which is the representative is here this evening, that we can encourage them to say, let's look at, say, we can look at, putting in the conduit, putting in the sub panels for these electrical boxes for electrical cars.
Okay, thank you. Maybe he'll address that. I saw his hand up there, so maybe that'll be addressed when he does his presentation. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm not sure, Mr. McLaughlin has a presentation on the agenda. Were you just here to answer questions?
I'm just here to answer questions, but in terms of I'll work back from the kind of charging stations. All our homes in the subdivision are pre-wired, so there's conduit to the garage from the electrical panel. Our electrical panels are all 200 amp service, so that's for the single family homes. In this instance, what we would do is we'd probably designate 5 or 6 spots dedicated to EV parking and plumb in the rough in the kind of electrical conduit there from the main switch bank, and that would provide the opportunity for future tenants and future home buyers to connect in. So, and in terms of parking, as per the zoning, we've provided the standard parking is 169, and in this kind of rough sketch site plan, we provided 173. So we're slightly above the zoning requirement for parking. So, but Megan Garrity will be providing the presentation today.
Do you want?
Yeah, if I could just do a follow-up, I guess the reason I was asking is, are they going to be designated parking lots for the apartment people then in the parking lot itself?
Yeah, so they'll be segmented. There'll be designated spaces for commercial uses, and there'll be designated spaces for specific tenants and visitor parking. So, and they're usually demarked on the parking spots themselves. So,
thank you.
Okay. There's no further questions. I will move on. Thank you, Mr. Del Bello, for your kind of throwing you in first night here, and you did well. Megan Garrity of GSP Group is here, and whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Great, thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe I have a presentation.
I think it's coming.
Perfect.
Go.
Thank you. So my name is Megan Garrity. I'm a planner with GSP Group. I'm here this evening on behalf of Thomasfield Homes. So you already know that Tom McLaughlin is here this evening, and we also have Hugh Handy, also from GSP Group on the line. Next slide, please. So I know that Reno had provided a bit of a summary, so I'll just give you a little bit more context since I am able to show some pictures here. So the sites are located in the Hopewell Crossing subdivision, which is south of Highway 7 and just southeast of the intersection of Highway 7 and Greenhouse Road. And the sites are located along, or the one site, Block 47, is located on Greenhouse Road, and the other one, Block 48, is more internal to the site. And that's part of phase 2 of the subdivision. Now Block 47 was part of phase 1B, which has been registered. Next slide, please. As Reno mentioned, the site is designated commercial mixed use, which permits commercial and residential uses up to a maximum of 4 stories in height. Next slide, please. The sites are zoned commercial mixed use, which obviously permit commercial and residential uses. And the current zoning limits ground floor residential to just 1 unit in mixed use buildings. While we're on this slide, I just want to point your attention to some of the other uses in the zoning in the subdivision. So there is one other commercial block right at the top of the site along Highway 7. It's C4B. It's in kind of a pink fuchsia color. So that also permits commercial mixed use development. There are also 3 other blocks zoned M7. So one is located just south of the Greenhouse Road mixed use block that's in pink. So the M7 is underneath in kind of a grayish blue with some hatching. And there's another M7 across from the other Block 48 site, which is also in kind of a gray and blue hatching. And then the third site is across from Greenhouse Road, a little bit further north, kind of north of those gray M1 sites. And so the reason why I'm mentioning this is that the M7 zone permits many uses, and some of which include business and professional offices, churches, daycare centers, healthcare and medical services, financial establishments, libraries, vet services, and other ancillary personal service, restaurant, and retail uses to those parent uses. So there's, I just want to demonstrate kind of the breadth of different uses that are permitted already on other blocks within the subdivision before we kind of get on to the next slide. So as Reno outlined, we're making a few requests. Essentially, the requests are being made to provide some added flexibility for development of these blocks in the Hopewell subdivision. We're proposing to allow more than one residential unit on the ground floor of mixed-use buildings. This does not prevent commercial uses on the ground floor, but just allows us for an opportunity to develop more residential on the ground floor. The concepts will show how this flexibility can be used. We're also proposing a minimum of 20% of the ground floor area of mixed-use buildings be maintained for non-residential uses. This will help to ensure that there in fact will be a mix of uses in the mixed-use buildings at a minimum. We've also requested permission to develop standalone residential units where buildings don't front onto a public road, so long as there are other non-residential uses elsewhere on those sites. And lastly, we've requested to change the frontage of Block 47 from Lasby to Greenhouse. That will allow us to use Lasby as the rear yard, and I'll explain that further in the concepts on the next slide. So this is a preliminary concept for Block 47. I just want to explain from our perspective, this is not necessarily a reduction of commercial, but rather kind of a different way of using commercial on the site. So in this case, you'll notice at the bottom corner of the site, that's a standalone commercial building. So instead of having just two mixed use buildings with all ground floor commercial and then residential above, they've split up the uses with the commercial the commercial building be its own building, and then having two smaller commercial blocks within the mixed use buildings. So by allowing that flexibility, we're able to kind of switch the design over so that it better suits the surrounding uses as well. So just south of this block at the intersection of Greenhouse Road and Hopewell Crossing Drive is an employment block that I pointed out on the zoning slide. So right now we have all of the commercial development focused right across the street from that employment block. And then further along Hopewell Crossing Drive, where we have the ground floor residential, that's abutting other residential uses. And similarly on the north end of the site along Greenhouse Road, those ground floor residential uses would be abutting other residential uses to the north. So we're not requesting to change density permissions or to eliminate the commercial component, just adding flexibility so that they can be designed and developed according to what we believe is appropriate for this site. And then the requested change for the front yard from Lasby to Greenhouse will allow us to bring the building closer to Greenhouse Road and have a better presence along that street frontage. Next slide, please. So block 48, this concept shows a bit more of the breadth of that flexibility. So we've got some of the standalone buildings at the back of the site. The thinking behind the standalone buildings is that for this site in particular, the depth of the site is such that people in cars or pedestrians going down Iron Horse Drive wouldn't necessarily see the commercial units in the back buildings. And so it'd be harder to get really the attention that they would need to thrive back there. So we've focused the commercial component to the frontage of the site where we think it will be better utilized. And also in this example, you'll see both the very top unit and the very bottom unit along the frontage have full ground floor commercial proposed. And it's only in the two middle buildings where the ground floor would be partially residential and partially commercial. And this is still conceptual. Both of these sites will need to go through detailed design in the site plan approval process. Next slide, please. So overall, the zoning requested will not change the permitted density of the site. The change will introduce added flexibility to the design of the development of the sites and ultimately doesn't prevent commercial uses from being developed on the ground floor. Both sites will still require to provide commercial uses to a minimum of 25% for mixed-use buildings. And there are also other blocks available, including the C4B and the 3 and 7 blocks in the subdivision that I pointed out that provide additional opportunities for non-residential services. And the proposed changes will maintain the intended mixed-use nature planned for these blocks, and the development of the mixed-use sites will still continue to contribute to the creation of a complete community, which was ultimately planned for this subdivision. And that's really all I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And a reminder that Tom and Hugh are also here.
Thank you. Questions, Council? Councillor McMillan?
Thank you, Mayor, through you. The 4-story limit in the zoning, was that the primary factor in staying to 4 stories for some of the multi-unit buildings?
I believe so. I don't know if there was a desire from Thomasfield to go much higher than 4 stories. I'm not sure if maybe Tom can speak to that.
Well, sorry, we also have the airport restrictions here too, so that's what's one of the primary limits on the height and density here. So,
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Merlion?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Megan. Going back to Block 47, the site plan that was agreed to is kind of less than a year old. Did the original plan have basically commercial on the ground floor of all of those 3 buildings with residential on top?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there was no concept before this. As part of the subdivision, this was always just a block. And so we never had any, this was the only concept that we have done for this site. And I know that in particular for some of their other sites in Breslau, Thomasfield has found that the commercial uptake for some of the available lands for commercial spaces isn't enormous at the moment. I think they see the flexibility as an opportunity to fill this space. And if there was an opportunity to add additional commercial, that there is still the option through the zoning to do that. This just allows them to kind of change based on the needs that they see fit in this area. And we think that flexibility is appropriate in this area.
Okay, and just a question about the ownership then. With the units, are these, could they potentially be condo units where businesses could own those commercial spaces, or is this, will it be a lease and there'll be a development company that looks after the site and all that kind of stuff?
Mr. McLaughlin, would you like to answer that one?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the tenure of the kind of commercial has not been established yet, but most likely it will be sold as condo kind of commercial condo units. But it really depends once we start marketing, it's how the market does on it. So it's kind of
okay.
Right now for us the retail market is quite tough in Breslau. We have right now we have a site plan approved in the kind of existing Hopewell Heights community for almost 50,000 square feet. We built 15,000 square feet of it on spec about 3 years ago, and we're only just now passing kind of the 2/3 mark on the lease up on it. So it's been a tough slog. We do believe in retail in Breslau, and we want to ensure that all our residents have somewhere to kind of go have an ice cream, but we also need the flexibility here to kind of to make this grow. The other thing I wanted to point out was that these buildings will be providing kind of the entry level condo or apartment suites for the area. So it'll provide a mix of housing here in the community too, which we feel is important. So I just want to kind of leave off with that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I like the concept of the mixed use, and we don't have a whole lot of that in the township, and I think Breslau is certainly an appropriate place for that. If we get the more retail we can get out there for the residents, that would be great. Okay, I don't have any other questions, so thanks for those answers.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Garrity, and we'll move on to Michael Whitmer is our next delegation. Mr. Whitmer, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So thanks very much. I won't take up too much of council's time tonight, and I'll keep my comments rather brief. I just wanted to go on record as a property owner in the neighborhood to say that I support the zoning bylaw amendment for both blocks 47 and 48. I feel that it meets the intent of the commercial mixed use land use designation in the official plan. Specifically to provide a neighborhood scale retail opportunities in a pedestrian friendly mixed use format. I do recognize that the official plan permits mixed use buildings, and I feel that it generally meets as well the policies for mixed use buildings, specifically in saying that townhouses or apartment buildings where a component of the first floor is dedicated to a small business or businesses. The only thing that I didn't see a policy for, and I understand from these public meetings that staff will address this when they report back, I didn't see a policy addressing freestanding residential. So the one block had a couple freestanding multi-residential buildings, but in general, I take it as the whole site is going to be mixed use. So I still feel that those policies of the official plan are met. Just more turning to general comments that I have on this application. I think it's important, especially right now, to ensure that the provision of retail space here in the context of a mixed use development, building and development is viable. So giving the applicant and the developer that flexibility to move the commercial retail space around this site, as well as other mixed use blocks in the subdivision, is important. I think we need to recognize that demand and characteristics for retail space is ever changing, and communities and developments need to respond to that. And I feel that these applications do allow for that. Specifically in the context of these two blocks in the subdivision, small scale retail here will be appropriate, specifically in the amount that's been requested. And I think in terms of looking at the whole subdivision, directing larger retail uses to the other commercial mixed use block closer to Highway 7 may be more appropriate. I know Planner Reno did speak to that. So just kind of concluding my comments here, I was attracted mainly to live in this community, part to it of being evolving mixed use and complete community. And I feel that these applications will still allow for that. It's exciting to see the neighborhood continue to evolve since I moved in about a year ago. And I think another important point to note is that I noticed that the ground floor area of these buildings will still be maintained at a 25% commercial gross floor area. So I think it's a fair balance and it provides flexibility. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Council, any questions? No, I don't see any. Thank you, Mr. Whitmer.
Thank you very much.
And our final delegation tonight is Mr. Kunle Oluwojere. How did I do?
You did well. Hi. Just do this. Yes, hello. Thank you so much. Thank you and good evening to Mayor Shens. Dear councillors, thanks so much for giving me the room to express our concern as an organization and neighbors to the proposed zone change of Harris Glen development for the blocks 47 and 48. The draft plan 30T11701 for the Hopewell Crossing subdivision. Now, I'm the next door neighbor and the occupant of the property that borders Hopewell Crossing, and the president of Lions Mains Ministry, 1700 Cramp Road in Breslau. We're quite excited about the development that's going on next door at the Hopewell Crossings. And there are just some factors that I want to bring to the table today that are of concerns. And these things actually work in relation to us being the neighbors. We see all the houses coming up and all the single dwellings all rising up. And we were looking forward to the sustaining of the employment zoning or designation for the land 47 and 48 that you've been talking about. We were really looking forward to what difference it's going to make in the neighborhood here. We have a lot of needs, amenities, just general living. It's getting farther and farther away while more residences are coming up. So in light of this, I'm just going to make a statement for council and just for everybody to hear that we're watching what's going on. We are right now in the process of developing our lands, as the planning department is very aware, and in our communications with us, we're working with our Metrolinx for the development of the Breslau GO station that's been proposed since 2017 with us, and currently at the level of the regional official plan inclusion from the Waterloo region. Our proposals contain overview concept of the GO station and the proposed 600 unit condominiums that's supposed to come down the road eventually with light commercial, which is supposed to be the density living right around the GO station as requested by Metrolinx. While we saw the Thomasville development rollout, as in the public documents, this was supposed to contain roughly about 900 plus single homes and townhouses. But, you know, that would address density living around the GO station from the discussion with the Waterloo Regional Planning. Intensification around and is probably going to be based on a quota-based needs assessment. That's what we understand. So this proposed zone change, we think goes beyond the initial limit of the dwellings in that blocks 47 and 48 for the Hopewell Crossing as in total, which at the moment is planned for over 900 dwellings. The current designation of these blocks is currently, as we understand, is employment. This proposed zone change also is proposing a larger employment designation as part of OP review. So the residential change being requested, we perceive might not conform to what is currently being zoned for. So I make this statement, you know, not in favor of it, but of course in favor of the development that's going on there, but that we can enjoy this area. This zone change at the present moment might be a bit something off of track from what we've been expecting. Now, while the current development is going on in the subdivision, this process, in my view, might be inappropriate if we don't visit the necessary changes that's going on around, including the GO station and the future plans that we have submitted to the region of Waterloo that's currently in process. So I make my statement, of course, with care, and of course, as the neighbors, and we're looking forward to a better neighborhood in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I don't see any. Thank you, Mr. Owojere, and for your comments. And you can turn your mic off. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you'd like, or.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for your presentation. I don't believe we have any further speakers on this. So I declare this public meeting to be closed. Thank you to everyone who participated in tonight's meeting. And I want to remind you that no decisions were made, but all feedback will be included in a future report. We have no presentations, we have no delegations, we have no unfinished business, but we do have some consent items. Would someone like to move the consent items? We have some cancellation, reduction, refund of taxes, and some minutes from the St. Jacobs and Elmira VIAs. Councillor Shantz, Councillor Martin, all those in favor? That's carried. A motion that council convenes into committee of the whole. Moved by Councillor Redekop, second by Councillor McMillan. All those in favor? It's carried. Motion that the summary of recommendations of committee of the whole dated November 3rd, 2020 be adopted as follows. And we have two items, but I believe Mr. Poupet wants to speak to one of them. The item one is ranked ballots, and item two is the snowplow sander truck award. Mr. Poupet.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. Through you to members of council, I just wanted to correct the public record from a question that was presented by Councillor Martin at the committee of the whole meeting on November 3rd. I was inaccurate in my response to Councillor Martin when he asked if it was a two-way plow. I apologize. And I emphatically said yes. It turns out no, it wasn't. I am happy to report we do have two-way plows in our inventory. So we do have two plow trucks that are outfitted with the two-way plow. We do have a spare two-way plow, but it was a purposeful purchase to go with a monoblade this year, as this plow is going to be predominantly on rural roads. So before council, hopefully does pass this, I certainly wanted to set the record straight on that, and I apologized to Councillor Martin. I apologize to council here for my inaccurate answer last week.
Thank you. Appreciate you checking it and correcting it. The other item for folks at home is the ranked ballots, and we are. It said that the Council of the Township of Woolwich requests the Standing Committee on Judicial Policy amend Bill 218 to allow municipal councils in Ontario to retain the right to use ranked ballots in future elections. Was the other item. Can I have a mover and a motion then that the summary of the recommendations be adopted? Moved by Councillor McMillan, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Staff reports, electronic document management software update. Deputy Clerk Smith.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for council's memory, I guess, in 2020 we proposed a project of about $50,000 to upgrade this software. Council removed this due to lack of funding. So what we're doing is we're suggesting an alternative here. We're proposing to reduce the scope and the cost of the project. And we're also recommending that it be funded through the Provincial Modernization and Grant Funding. Modernization and Efficiency Grant Funding. The project will still increase productivity, reduce security risks, fix bugs, help improve the use of disposal of documents that are no longer needed, and improve performance from satellite offices, which we're finding is getting a little bit challenging these days. So this is again, this is our recommendation that council authorize the use of $42,000 in provincial modernization and efficiency money to upgrade the existing EDOC software project. And with that, Madam Mayor, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, council? Councilor Ryan?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Mr. Smith. Just wondering, where does that leave our modernization funding after this eDocs? And then there's another report further down recommending using money as well, almost $100,000. Where does that leave us for any future? Oh, I guess that would be Mr. Petherick. I see him up. Anyway, where are we at?
Mr. Petherick.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. So essentially through the 2020 budget, we had about $500,000 included in various, whether it's the operating or the capital budget. We received $725,000 from the province. So that's still left about $225,000. So both the recommendations in this report and the next report can be accommodated. What council will see that, of course, through COVID, just to kind of give you a glimpse at what we're looking at for 2021, due to COVID, a lot of these projects did have to be put on hold just because, we were trying to maintain our cash flow at the beginning of it. The other part of it is that we had, I guess we were distracted by other things, so we couldn't fulfill our plans. We were busy kind of dealing with the COVID and related outfall because of that. But we are going to be putting anything we didn't spend into the 2021 budget, and hopefully everything will be spent out by then. But to answer your question, we have capacity to take on both this one and the next one with our modernization.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Can I have someone move that the Council of the Township of Woolwich authorize the use of $42,000 in provincial modernization and efficiency funding to upgrade the existing EDARS software? Councillor Shantz, and seconded by Councillor Redekop. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Mr. Girth, you're up next. There he is.
There I am. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of Council, thank you for your time. I would like to provide some additional details for the Council Chamber's audio-video upgrade proposal and to request the designation of some of the modernization and efficiency funding the Ontario government provided to the Township to fund this project. I will now provide some background information and then some of the proposed system highlights. So the core audio video systems for the council chambers have been in place since 2009. There have been some minor upgrades over the years, such as the LCD screen, projectors, room controller equipment. And while this system has served us well, over time, some challenges have developed that were experienced prior to the March 2020 COVID-19 pandemic shutdown. One of the biggest challenges that was experienced was the poor performance of the original wireless microphone system, which caused significant issues for all attending the meetings to effectively hear what was being discussed. In addition, the most recent projector replacement in 2019, due to the age of the core system, was not able to be controlled by the wireless controller. Staff began to discuss early in 2020 the process for refreshing the system to correct these challenges when the pandemic shutdown was issued and all in-person meetings ceased. Once the in-person meetings moved to virtual meetings and the desire and need to live stream the meetings for public transparency occurred, it was quickly realized that the current system would not meet the current needs as well as any future needs to support hybrid meetings. After many internal discussions with staff to gather the needs of a new system for council chambers, an RFP was published to gather proposals from industry experts. We received a good number of proposals, some of which were highly advanced and automated, Cadillac systems, if you will. The solution that we're proposing is a happy medium, providing enough automation and capability to meet our current and future needs while balancing the dollars being asked. The solution being recommended in the report upgrades the core systems to allow better capabilities for recording and live streaming for purely in-person meetings, as well as to accommodate hybrid meetings like the meeting we are currently in. The audio system will be upgraded to a more current discussion system so that when we are able to gather for in-person meetings, all attendees will be able to hear the discussions being held. Part of the improvement is to install speakers in the second floor hallway for overflow purposes. This will also aid, the new audio system and discussion system will also aid in the recording and live streaming as all in-person staff, council and delegates will be able to use a microphone instead of the current use of a central microphone device. The video system will be improved by allowing us to control all video equipment and to determine which video source is displayed on which video output. In addition, the display screen currently being used in the Doty Helmer room will be replaced with a large mobile LCD screen that can be used individually or can be connected to the main system as a third screen for those seated in the back when the room is expanded for more public attendees. While there will be two video sources that can be hard connected to the system, the solution also provides for wireless display connectivity so that content from a device can be wirelessly shared on screen. The solution, as a cost-saving measure, will reuse a number of items that are in good working condition. This includes the LCD screen currently in the council chambers and the projector and screen in council chambers, the ceiling speakers in council chambers and the Doty Hummel room, and the lighting and window shade controllers. This proposal, in order to support recording and live streaming, will also include the install of 2 controllable cameras. These cameras will be able to pan, tilt, and zoom, providing us a number of options for how they can be used. The solution currently is also not utilizing all the available input or output options. So there is future expandability that can be realized without having to replace the core systems. We are also anticipating that this system will be more friendly to use so that the room can be utilized more for staff meetings, larger training sessions, and other virtual meetings throughout the day. We are asking through this report that council designate from the modernization and efficiency funding the amount listed, $96,894, to be used for this project so as to avoid the impact to the tax levy. If approval is granted, we will begin to work with the vendor this year so that the new system can be ready in the spring of 2021. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions council may have.
Council, any questions? Councillor Shantz?
Yes, thank you. I do have a few questions, and I think maybe you answered some of them for me, Barry. But just to confirm, so when you suggested that we'd have individual microphones, are you talking when we're actually doing the hybrid meetings as well? Like tonight, each member in council chambers will have their own microphone that we can hear, or we still have to use a central mic?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, the intention is, and the way that it will be designed is that even in a hybrid meeting, every member that is present in the room will be able to use their own individual mic. That is the way that the system is designed. The way that the live streaming will work is it all goes through kind of one audio signal, and same thing with the video. So it all gets presented to the live stream and to the attendees that are remote as well.
And just to follow up, if I may, through you, Mayor, the cameras, does that mean that we're going to start videoing all of our meetings and have them available for the public on YouTube?
Yeah, I think at this point, there is no going back. So that is the intention with the cameras, to be able to live stream. Whether it's a hybrid or whether it's a all in person, there's no need for remote attendees. We would be able to live stream standalone with everybody in the room without any remote attendees, or in a hybrid situation.
And just one last question on those cameras. Are they set up that they would pan and zoom to a certain location and just with a press of a button, or is it something that we have to manually pan them and zoom them?
The way that the system is currently set up, the 2 cameras would normally be stationed or positioned to either show the delegate. So one camera would be facing toward the delegate and towards the gallery. The other camera would be facing towards council and staff and the chair. Yes, we could move and tilt them and move them around that way. But the way that this particular system is designed it is very static. From the wireless or from the controller that the meeting facilitator has, they would be able to pan and tilt and zoom on demand from that controller as needed, if it was required.
Yeah, I just, sorry, I just know that a lot of the newer cameras have those presets that you just have to hit a button and it automatically, and it's a little easier and quicker to pan and zoom. So I didn't know whether this has that capabilities or not.
I'm sure there will, through the process of the programming and the design, we will talk about presets and different things that we would want to do. The nice thing is that if there was something else that we wanted to record, like a training session that we wanted to publish to staff, we could use these cameras to record and do that kind of stuff, and then present it to staff so that it'd be more flexible that way. Other meetings that could be broadcast and different things that we want to do. We could use it for mayors that want to provide content on YouTube as well, right? Rather than using an iPad or an iPhone or something like that. So different things. There's a lot of flexibility that we could use with that. But yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Rowan.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Mr. Girth. With all the new fancy equipment, is all of this stuff able to be used by the current staff? I'm just wondering if there's going to be a request that we need more people to operate cameras and you know, make the audio function and all that kind of stuff. Is this something you can contain within your department?
I may bring Jeff into this, but I think the intention is to make it user-friendly so that the meeting facilitator, once trained, could manage the entire system within the groups that we have.
Okay.
Mr. Smith, did you want to comment?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Just so council knows, right now we generally have 3 staff members from the clerk's office or the corporate services office in council chambers. We used to have 2, the clerk and the meeting facilitator. I think what we're looking at is hoping to get down to 1 with this system. To back down to 2 as we would normally have in a regular council meeting with this system. So this will really help make us more efficient and have fewer staff sitting available for tech issues.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor McMillan?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, not a question, just a comment. Just wanted to thank staff for bringing a recommendation that allows us to stream our meetings. I've been a part of organizations that weren't so eager to have their meetings online and streamed and recorded. And I think the increased transparency, the increased accessibility of these meetings. I know I've enjoyed watching the regional council meetings since we've gone into COVID. I've watched some other township meetings. The ability for people who can't necessarily make it to council chambers to be able to watch and maybe even go back, the next day and watch the recorded version of the meetings. I think it's really good for us as a council. So I just wanted to say thanks for bringing that part of this recommendation forward.
One of the bonuses of COVID, I suppose. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Someone like to move the recommendation then? Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Shantz. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Mr. Petherick, you have a report for the 3rd quarter.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So just to
give news, right?
Just to get some highlights on at least the financial end of things, and then I'll open up the floor to council that may have questions either on the financial or the business plan updates that have been provided in the 3rd quarter report. So looking at the financial side, to the end of the 3rd quarter, September 30th, we've expended just over $7.5 million of our net operating budget. That leaves us with a positive operating variance of about 0.06%. From this is actually really good news, because if council recall, when we talked about the 2nd quarter report, we were at a negative operating variance of about 2.29%, or about $280,000. So we've been able to turn things around a little bit, and that is really good news. And there's some things that I want to go into to kind of explain how we ended up where we are right now. And all of those, unfortunately, is all related to COVID at this time. I would say it's probably not unlike any other organization, I think, around the world. COVID has definitely had a huge impact on the township's operations. So still looking at the theme that I talked about in the 2nd quarter report with regards to the revenues, looking at the recreation and community services, the revenues have been the hardest hit, I would say, throughout the township. And really particularly wanted to point out that the year-over-year recreation revenues are down about $700,000 to where they were this time last year. So that's a significant impact that they've had. And as we see the second wave hit us right now and further restrictions potentially looming on us, where we're going to end up ultimately in the recreation revenue is highly unpredictable from us. So we're going to have to really pay attention to how this ends up. But I also wanted to point out from the good news side of it. So the recreation community services staff have done a tremendous job, just trying to make sure that they keep their cost containment tight as they possibly can, especially under the circumstances. Council may recall that they had to temporarily lay off staff, mostly in the part-time area. Also, with the closures of our facilities in the early part of the pandemic, we did see some cost savings on hydro and other utilities, as well as reduction in our some of our maintenance and equipment repair costs. So from my point, I think RCS staff should be really recommended and commended for the job that they've done to put them into a position where they are at the end of the third quarter. And just from a context perspective, we typically use the percentage remaining as kind of like a feeler as to where we should be. So given the end of the third quarter, they should roughly have about 25% of their net operating budget left. They're sitting at about 26% left. So they're actually tracking better than they could be. So, I think that goes to kudos to Anne and her staff for keeping everything in check as much as it can with all the lost revenues that they experienced. The other one I want to highlight from the revenue side is the waiving of penalty and interest. Again, you would recall that through the second quarter report, I said we lost about $111,000 in penalty and interest from the time period of April to June. The question was asked, what would we have expected to see in the normal circumstances and what really would have been COVID related? And I did say I would report back through this report on that. So under the 111,000, given the 3 to 5 year average, I think we could probably expect that we would have seen about $75,000 to $78,000 in penalty and interest income. So that means that the COVID impact, the decisions that we made as a township, that had an impact about $33,000 to $35,000 extra or additional penalty and interest that was waived because of the measures we took. One of the things I want to highlight, not on the revenue side, but more on the expense side, is with regards to the emergency operations. Now, this is a line that we created to keep track of the expenditures that are specifically related to COVID. They're contained under the CIO's budget. And this account is used for such things as hand sanitizers, wipes, disposable masks, plexiglass, advertising that we've done to keep our residents informed. And I would say to the end of September, we spent approximately $104,000, and I can see that this number is going to continue to climb as the pandemic continues on. I can say from the good news side, as council is aware, we did receive $550,500 in the provincial and federal Safe Restart Agreement grant. So we're able to fund so far the expenditures we've had from COVID, that $104,000 we've been able to fund from this grant. So that is really good news from our side. But one of the things also to really kind of talk about, if we didn't receive any funding from the provincial and federal funding, I would say it'd be safe to say we would be looking at a deficit projection about, I'd say $250,000 to $400,000 is probably quite possible. But since we received this funding, this is more than going to cover any kind of projected deficit that we may experience. And so hopefully my anticipation is that as long as we keep things in check and nothing sort of goes off the rail that is not COVID related, we hopefully will be either tracking on budget or hopefully in a bit of a surplus position. One of the things to also point out with this grant that while we're projecting about $250,000 to $400,000, this is still going to leave money left in this Safe Restart Agreement grant that we received. What we're able to do is we're able to transfer that funding into 2021 because we know we're going to need that funding in 2021. We know we're going to have additional expenditures that are going to be seen, from additional safety measures, face masks, hand sanitizers, cleaning products, the like. We're going to still continue to see that into 2021, as well as we're going through the 2021 budget. We are having a struggle still with the recreation revenue and trying to forecast of where that's going to go. So we can actually still utilize some of this revenue to bring into the 2021 budget to kind of help offset some of the struggles or the pinch points that we're going to be seeing with the potential lost recreation revenue. So kind of looking quickly at the water and wastewater budgets, just kind of want to highlight the wastewater program. We're sitting in a surplus position of just over $300,000. Good news from that, we were sitting at a deficit about just shy of $100,000 at the end of the second quarter. And I believe through the second quarter report, I was talking to council about that we were experiencing a fairly dry season, and given the inflow and infiltration issues that we do have in the township, this really does start to play a factor, because we build our budgets on a 5-year average. And when we start to see the dry season, that kind of helps our budget. If we see the very wet season, that's not really good for our wastewater budget. So given the dry seasons, we are in a surplus position. I would anticipate to see that start to lessen as we get to the end of the year, though. For the water program, I would say we're in a very minor surplus position, just shy of $5,000. So from my standpoint, we're tracking right on budget. Very unique to see. Don't normally see that this close to the budget. So from my standpoint, I'm very pleased with kind of where that program area is. But still within both the water and wastewater side, one of the things I do want to highlight, and I did mention it in the second quarter report, is still with our water meter remote program. As I said before, we have secured all of the necessary equipment, but we are unfortunately still waiting for Water North Hydro to be able to work out an agreement for us to be able to utilize their telecommunications infrastructure, to do that. Because as I mentioned before, I wouldn't want to be in a case where we start to do the installations and Water North Hydro starts to see these meters pop up on their system and go, wow, what's happening? What's going on? And then potentially shut it down. Because we can't read our meters the way we normally would with these remotes attached to it. We would have to go back and take them all off in order to do that. So we are still continuing to work with Water North Hydro. I know they are busy people, but we're going to continue to work with them and get that program started and going. But it is going to be one of the things that you're going to see transferred into the 2021 budget. From the capital budget side, not really too much to say. I think things are progressing the way they kind of normally do, save and except for the number of projects that we had to defer. And of course, the financial statements that are pending to this report, you'll see that there's an update as to what projects have already been completed this year, what is anticipated to be completed this year, and what has been already deferred. So with that, I would take any questions that council may have.
Any questions, council? Councilor McMillan, Councilor Rohan.
I have a couple questions, so maybe I'll just ask one and then we can go around to others and come back to me if it hasn't been asked. With regards to the water meters, do we know what the holdup is there? Is there anything that council could do to move that process along? I understand you said that Water North Hydro is busy. I'm sure that they are, but I pay my bill there every month and it's not small. So just wondering if we have any idea what the holdup is there.
Through Madam Mayor. So my understanding, they have been working through their rate review. So I'm not in the electrical business. I can't remember how often they do. I think it's every 5 years. They have to do a rate review. So they actually just finished completing that. And from my understanding, it is a very monumentous task for them to be able to do that. A lot of back and discussions they have with the OEB and regulators. So they have finished that. I think there's a couple of other projects I think they're trying to catch up on. From my standpoint, I think, if council really unified shows the interest to say, we really want this project to move forward, I think between myself and Mr. Redeman, we can start to put pressure on Water North Hydro CFO and CEO to get that agreement going.
I don't know how the rest of council feels, but certainly for me, we've spent that money, we've bought that hardware. It's a shame that It's sitting there just waiting for something. So I would certainly be on board with a polite request to hurry up.
I see some sort of noddings, yes? Okay, Councilor Merlan?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz. Just a general comment first, Mr. Patrick, some of your comments about the rec department deserving some kudos. I'm a pool user and I'm there like 4 times a week. The staff have been great. The facility has been clean. Everybody's been more or less happy. I've had a number of different residents call me over this period just with we have a whole lot of new rules now of how we're able to open, and some of them quite perturbed. And then I explained how, the rules to open are all mandated by the province, and they seem to understood where we're coming from, and I'm sure the staff have taken a lot more phone calls than I have taken with people not understanding why the rules are the rules that we have. So my hats off to all of the staff there at the rec department. The other question I had was, I was just going through some of the things that have been completed, the work projects through whatever the table is that we got. One of them was in the IT department. They talked about replacing all the computers and that project being done this year. I know we talked about this at the budget this past year, and at that point it was determined that the IT department's been using a 4-year replacement on the computers. Is that something that staff is going to talk about, whether or not that's appropriate or not? Just with the computers, you can go 6-7 years easy. The technology hasn't changed that much in the last 10 years. You get a few speed options bumps, but the technology hasn't been that much advanced that we should be replacing them every 4 years. Even some maintenance, swapping out hard drives or something, you could do things like that to reuse the computers. But 4 years is pretty is still, they're not past their usefulness. So can you see if, or can you, I don't know if anybody can tell me that that discussion has been had, and clearly it wasn't had this year, but if maybe that's in the books.
Mr. Well, who wants to go first? Mr. Smith wants to jump in. Mr. Patrick, you want to start?
Through Madam Mayor, I'll start off and see if Jeff has something to add. So when we did talk about that, we heard council pretty loud and clear when we brought the budget development report. I think unfortunately for 2020, we had a lot of those planned purchases already in play. So we've had that discussion both from an IT committee perspective, and even just, I think the IT division themselves had that discussion. And I believe the plan going forward, and this is probably where I'd kind of look at Jeff, and this is where I wish Barry was still online. He'd probably tell me exactly what the plan was going to be going forward. But we are going to be shifting or stretching out those replacement dates. I don't remember if we're going 5, 6. I can't remember exactly what the time frame is. But we are stretching those replacement dates out. So really what it's going to do, it's going to help us in the short term, because it's going to free up some dollars from that. We know that it's just going to be short term, because once you delay it, at whatever date you delay it, that's when you're going to be now replacing everything as if you would like in the 4-year schedule. But we do recognize, and we did hear council very loud and clear, that we need to do something a little bit different, and yeah, you're going to see that coming forward in the 2021 budget, that something different's happening.
Okay, great, thanks.
Mr. Smith, did you have anything to add? No. Went away. Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Patrick. We get inundated with a lot of emails, and especially from AMO. And I'm wondering if you've talked anything about the small business tax relief going forward. I know there's some things coming from the government, and maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Through Madam Mayor, so this is, still fairly new because it was just announced last week, and I believe another announcement came out today. I think this is probably, because obviously the devils are going to be in the detail. We need to kind of understand what exactly they're talking about when they say the municipalities are going to have the option of providing some small business tax relief. I have a good feeling this is probably going to be a tax policy perspective, and tax policy is really handled at the regional level. But that doesn't mean that we don't have a say. And I think, Mayor Shantz represents Woolwich very well, but the area treasurers also do have a very strong, or the rest of us have a very strong voice to the regional treasurer, in kind of shaping how tax policies happen. But I have a feeling this is probably going to be a tax policy, because I think it's getting back into, is this going to be some sort of change in legislation that they're going to make to the Municipal Act, or is this a change they're going to make to the Assessment Act? Because depending on which way they go is depending on how we can provide some relief and what that's going to look like. But yeah, we haven't really specifically talked about it, but I can guarantee you we're going to be talking about it very, very shortly.
Anyone else? Councillor McMillan?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I just wanted to say thank you for the information breakdown regarding the tax relief and that 111,000, and how the 33 of it was COVID related, and then we lost that 75 or 80,000 that we would normally receive that we didn't, that likely had very little or nothing to do with COVID. I think going forward, it looks like we're headed towards more restrictions, more lockdowns. We're likely going to have more forgiveness for people. There's going to be more impacts from COVID, and that breakdown of information allows us to use a scalpel instead of a hammer and actually, help the people that really need it. So I just wanted to say thanks for the breakdown of that information.
Councillor Shantz?
Thank you. Through you, and maybe Mr. Brenneman can answer this if Mr. Pester can't, about the cross-border agreement with Guelph and Aramasa, the fire agreement, and what happened there. Why have they decided to pull out of that?
Mr. Brenneman?
Yes, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Shantz and the rest of council. They went through their own fire master plan and fire services review. And basically it was a decision made by council to go with the city services. So it was just a decision that they made in terms of how they wanted to see their services provide. It was no knock against certainly our fire service. We've been providing exceptional service and then some for many years, but it was just a business decision that they made.
Thank you.
Okay, before we move on, just a couple of things that seem appropriate given the conversation we've had. First of all, I want to say thank you to Richard and his staff for keeping our finances in line as much as possible over these last months, and especially also to Anne and the rec staff for all their hard work. I know they probably were hit the worst in many ways, and they've done a great job of managing and navigating through that. The frontline staff is in recreation and in our roads crews, and to the extent that we had things open, they worked through all of this. So I just want to say thank you to all of them for their hard work through this. And as I say that, I'm also reminded about the news reports that are coming out and how our cases are increasing. And I just want to really encourage everyone to, we all know what we have to do to get this under control. And, it's the same old thing, you wear a mask, you keep your distance, keep your small groups, and wash your hands. And it's really important as this is escalating that we try really hard to get it under control. So so we don't have to be shut down. I saw that Manitoba is shut down today for, I believe it's a month, is it? Yeah. And BC and Alberta are talking about it, so do your best to follow those guidelines. And with that little sermon, we'll move on to the next report. And Mr. Petherick, you've got that one too.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this report is being brought forward. This is the 2021 fees and charges. All the fees and charges that are being proposed through this report are going to be effective January 1st, 2021, save and except if we had any changes to the ice rates that normally would have happened in the August as opposed to January. But all I can really say from this perspective is, staff reviewed all the fees. They were looking at it from the perspective of trying to keep all the fees down to the minimum, try not to have too many increases in fees, but only really strategically look at the fees that needed to be addressed for various reasons, because, one, they may not have been in a cost recovery, so there was a plan of getting up to cost recovery, and they're continuing to do that. But I would say, for the most part, the directors are here to talk about their fees and charges if council has any questions with them.
Council? Councilor Martin?
Thank you. Through you to Richard. Why do we have a problem collecting fees from accidents where the fire department goes to, and like what's happening there that insurance companies aren't paying?
So, through you, Madam Mayor. So what happened before, when we had a switch, the fire department was able to get all the information from the police. I think there was a change where they were not able to get all the information from the police services anymore. So they had to sign up for the error system, where they actually at least got the license plate information. So they were there at the scene, they write down the license plate number. They were able to find out who the owner was. So what they would do from that perspective is we would bill the owner of the vehicle that was involved in the accident that wasn't a resident. And then in turn, we would encourage them to say, pass this on to your insurance company. Most did, some did not. But for some reason in 2000, so there's a significant write-off that we're seeing this year that really relates to things that happened in 2018. Why that happened, I really can't tell you, because it's unique. It hasn't happened before. But what I can tell you going forward, though, is that we've already changed the process, because we now actually can obtain the insurance information again. So now we have people's insurance company, we have their insurance policy number. So we're going back to, or we have already gone back to billing the insurance companies directly. And I don't think we're going to see as problems like we did now. So I think it was really just people not saying enough to the insurance for whatever reason. The ones, even though we had a number of write-offs this year, these accounts are in collections. So, as the years go on and we actually do retain or find that the collection agency was able to get money from these people, it comes back as revenue to us.
Anyone else? Okay, there's a motion there on the fees and charges. Would someone like to move it? Councilor McMillan, Councilor Reddecock, all those in favor? Oh, okay, thank you, that's carried. Rubber articulated loader award. Is this single or dual, Jared?
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. It drives both ways. It goes forward and backwards. So yeah. I will do my best to provide council with accurate information in presenting this report. So thank you, Mayor Shantz, to members of council. We do have this is our final vehicle purchase of the year. We have fulfilled all our obligations with respect to fleet. That's a good news story. We are asking council to approve the purchase of a rubber tired articulated loader to Brent Tractor Limited at a cost of $200,695.14 after HST rebate. For the layman such as myself, I would just say that's a front end loader. That's what that is. You can see that we do have two currently. We would be retiring one and sending that to auction based on the last report, the IS-24 report, the tandem snowplow, and this report IS-25. We will be putting money back into the fleet reserve. So that's a good news story as well for council. We did receive 4 bids. All fairly competitive, and Brant offered the best price, and certainly it was the preferred by staff. So with that, I would be happy to try to answer any questions to the best of my ability.
Any questions? Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Martin and Councillor Moynihan, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Is there any other business? I don't have anything else on regional matters. I said my little blurb. Council, any reports? Councillor McMillan?
Not a report, just a quick update. My evening walk normally takes me by the tennis courts on First Street by John Hood School that we put some money into to upgrade and became the property of the township. And I just wanted to let thanks staff for making that happen and let everybody know. I walked by there and those courts are packed now. It's November 10th. We were out there last night at 8:30, November 9th, and there must have been 10 people out there playing tennis at 9 o'clock last night. It's been getting a lot of great use from our citizens. So I just wanted to say that that's worked out great, and thank you staff for making that happen for our citizens.
Thank you. The golf courses are happy too. Anything on the outstanding activity list? Nothing? Okay. Can I motion that the following bylaws be introduced and read a first and second time? We have a bylaw to exempt certain lots from part lot control. Lot 75, Plan 58M661 of Emerald Homes, a bylaw to lift reserves for Valley View Heights, St. Jacobs, Water Street, St. Jacobs, a bylaw to establish and require payment of fees and charges, a bylaw to amend bylaw 87-2007 to establish and require payment of fees authorized under the Planning Act and similar charges, a bylaw to amend bylaw 27-2017 to provide for construction, demolition, change of use, and transfer of permit and inspections, and the setting and refunding of fees. A bylaw to amend bylaw 2-2009 to establish and require payment of fees and charges for certain services provided by the fire department, and a bylaw to confirm all actions and proceedings of council of November 10th. Who would like to move that? Councillor Moynihan and Councillor. All those in favor?
Hey, Mayor Shantz. I just noticed 12.4.2, the Valley View Heights. Is that the St. Jacobs Seniors Home that we're talking about?
Valley View Heights is Water Street. The seniors' home is St. Jacobs Place.
Okay, so that one isn't the Valley View that both you and I had conflict on previously?
That's a good question. I don't think so. Can someone help me out? Mr. Pomponi?
In looking at the bylaw, it's just lifting a 1-foot reserve to allow access from one portion of the road to another portion of the road. So the municipalities will put a 1-foot reserve in that place so that it's not part of the municipal road allowance to prevent people from crossing it. So lifting it will allow that access of vehicles to go across it. So it's part of the subdivision.
That's at the south end of town, right?
Yes.
Okay, I got the wrong place. Okay, sorry.
No, I went through my mind for a second too, and then you had me second guessing it. Okay, all those in favor then? And that's carried. Thank you. Motion that Committee of the Whole rise and report to council, moved by Someone? Councillor Redekop, second by Councillor Merlihan. All those in favor? That's carried. Motion that council confirms and adopts the proceedings of committee of the whole. Moved by Councillor McMillan, second by Councillor Shantz. All those in favor? Carried. We have 3 items of correspondence. Does council want to discuss any of them? No. There's no public notice, no notice of closed motion, no notice of closed meeting, no notice of motion. So the final passage of the bylaws, the motion that the following bylaws in the hands of the clerk be read a 3rd time and finally passed, and that they be numbered as bylaw number 76-2020 to 82-2020, and that they be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the corporate seal. And I've already read them, so I'm not going to do it again. All those, a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Merlihan, Councillor Redekop, all those in favor? That's carried. And that is it, unless council has anything else. Okay, Councillor Martin.
I was just gonna ask if Annie's still with us?
She is. Would you like to see her?
Yes, I would.
There she is.
Hi. Being that you're in charge of buildings, you're doing an outstanding job in the Conestoga yard. I've got nothing but good feedback from the neighbors. They said it's overdue, and the colors that you chose is certainly gonna blend in with what's around there, and it's just a good news story, and I would encourage the rest of council to look at some of the other projects that have been done in the township this year. And wait another week or 2 to come to Conestoga and look at that. But it's gonna look like a new building with new doors, new siding. Siding's not on yet, new windows. And you'll also notice that the yard's cleaned up real nice. So it really looks good. So Annie, hats off to you. You've done a good job there.
Okay. Thanks. In closing, council would like to thank all who participated or tuned in to the meeting tonight on our YouTube live stream and on Rogers TV. Council members and staff, I'll remind you to stay connected on Zoom until the live stream has stopped. And I'll say good night to everyone, and Jeff will let us know when it stopped. But first we need a motion to adjourn, I guess. Moved by Councillor Shantz, seconded by Councillor McMillan. You guys don't want to go? All those in favor? And that